welcome to today's event. In honor of the Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month, we are conducting interviews for our virtual newsletters. Our goal is to give our audience an inside look into the lives, experiences, and perspectives of different members in our AAPI community. I'm Audrey Fields, and my guest today is Mrs. Nantida Songkham.
So I was born and raised in Seattle, Washington. My parents, my mom, she was born in the US and my dad was born in Laos. So ethnically, I'm Thai, Lao, Cambodian. And every time I tell somebody that, they're like, where is that? And when you show it on the map, it's like a cute little grouping. So that makes up me. I have been in the military for 6 years, like you said. I joined right out of high school. And I don't come from a military background by any means. I just found this sense of patriotism upon being middle term in high school and thought this would be a fun gig for me to try out growing in my adolescence. And so far, it's been a really good gig. I grew up in a very diverse household. So I'm full Asian, Thai, Lao, and Cambodian. I'm half Lao, a quarter Thai, and a quarter Cambodian. And it's interesting because my mom's side, so she's Cambodian Thai, but the household we grew up in was mostly influenced by Cambodian culture. My grandpa served against the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia during the Cambodian genocide. And after obviously the war, they were immigrants to the United States. And they came to give the family, a better life. But it really did shape the household we grew up in because, even though I have no really family that established roots in the United States military, I would still say my family is very supportive of whatever country houses us and being able to give back in the best way possible. So in a way, though it's the US military, I'm still translating the legacy that my grandpa established when bringing his family here. My mom grew up in the United States. So and we're really young. We're like 17 years apart. So we're very typical people from Washington. I'd like to say are West Coast girls, Pacific Northwest, but we grew up, it was kind of rough in the beginning, I'd say, because my mom was a single mom. So she had me at 17. My dad, I still talk to him, it just didn't work out as kids. Very normal story for a lot of households. So I'd like to say it's really relatable, the upbringing I had. But seeing my mom grow up, she had to struggle a lot, being young herself, not able to finish high school. So whenever I was growing up, it was always emphasized like work hard for what you want. But I'm actually very appreciative of the fact that I didn't come from this stereotypical, Asian household that people like to label us in, where you need to be a doctor or you have to be some kind of engineer. Though my grandpa was an engineer, I didn't go that route. I was very artsy. I like to say I'm a hippie, being from the Seattle area. I loved art, music. I'm bad at math. That's kind of something funny. So in my household, I'd be struggling with math, and my mom's bad at math. So we did not fall into this horrible stereotype of Asians. I was just a typical teenager growing up. And a little bit insight on my dad's side came to the United States when he was a baby. So he was born in Laos. And it was a rough upbringing. There's a lot I don't know, and it's like that. I've noticed amongst like my Asian friends that have family that immigrate. Sometimes it's a little bit of a long disconnect to what they grow up in now. You don't really know the times then, or maybe it was a little taboo to talk about the kind of upbringing over there. So my dad's side's a lot more of a mystery, but he's an interesting case because he grew up in the United States, but he has a lot of Laos influence. So he speaks the language, and his family community is very close knit in being from Laos. But I ironically don't understand Laos, and I don't understand Thai, but I do a little bit understand Cambodian. So it's one of those, the grandparents say something and I respond in English. So I'm very much a good example of what an Asian American looks like nowadays. Actually, my initially was not for it. And it's funny, I'll probably show her this and she'll be like, I was always supportive. But there was a time where she thought that was crazy. Even though there was never this pressure to become a doctor or something super scientific in that sense, there was an emphasis to achieve more than she was able to. So for her, it was really school and being able to establish a career, marry at a semi-appropriate age, you know, or have children by that time. And unfortunately for her, I kind of deviated, not out of rebellion or anything, but my mom actually, she got married when I think I was 12 or 13. She married my stepdad, Frank, and he's Mexican. He was born in Texas and he works for CBP, like law enforcement. So it's interesting because though I grew up in this Asian household, I had a lot of influence through the Mexican culture too. You know, my dad's considered Chicano, so he was born in the US, but he gave me a lot of extra exposure outside of my family, which was already not that, you know, that stereotype of an Asian household already. So I just keep getting more influenced by diversity and different aspects of life. And so for him, asking me what I wanted to do for college was always me responding and, oh, I want to be like a hippie. I want to go paint and sell my art in like San Francisco. I'm sure that I can recall that. I always said I'd sell my art and just be an artist, like a freelance artist. And though they were very supportive, I did that all through high school, my whole life growing up. They were like, okay, maybe you can minor in art and maybe do a little something else. And I had no idea what I wanted to go to school for. So my stepdad actually suggested looking into the Air Force, not by like a forced advice, but just to give me perspective on something I didn't think about. And after doing a little bit of research, I found that it would be a good gig. You know, like I was always the kind of kid that grew up wanting to work hard and making life easy for my mom because she did so much for me growing up and seeing her go to work early and come home late. And so I was like, I'd rather go to the military, make my own money for school, try to be proactive and productive while not knowing what to go to school for. And so when I dropped the ball on them, my dad was like, yeah, that's awesome. And my mom's like, what are you doing? I think she was just scared just because we didn't have really members in my family that were in the military. My uncle was in the army, but that was kind of like a long time ago. So she wasn't really sure how the military ran now. And comparing it back then, I don't think that's even a better comparison. So she was more worried. But after providing her with kind of logical facts and how I wanted to live my life, she became supportive. And now she's like my number one cheerleader.
In, I guess, just in general, or even in the workplace, have you received any forms of racial injustices or maybe stereotypes that you've had faced?
Yes, so you know, I'm very fortunate I'd say I grew up like a normal American girl, but I'm still very close to my Asian roots. And I think if I'm not like criticized or victimized of stereotypes about my looks necessarily, it always did come down to this idea of Asians being that model minority. I'd say that's the biggest one that had an impact on my upbringing because despite my family just pretty much giving me a very grounded life, externally in school, from other students and just people in my peer group, they would give me criticism about my lack of ability to be good at math or school. I was a good student by all means. I wouldn't say I suffered at all or struggled in high school, but I went to in Washington or in Seattle, Washington, a good background is knowing that there's a very large Asian community. It's a very diverse community. Like you could get all walks of life there, but the Asian community is very prominent. And the area I lived in, a lot of people were Asian. And the school I went to was an Ivy League school, International Baccalaureate. So a lot of people that attended that school specifically went there to be prepped to go to Ivy League colleges such as Stanford, Harvard, and a lot of people end up going. So I was definitely the outlier in that because I attended the school not for the program, but because it was in my school district where I lived. It just was so happened I attend a school that a lot of people go to Ivy League schools for. And I noticed early on, I always knew I was bad at math. I always struggled with my mom. It'd be long nights struggling with like multiplication, division. I couldn't do it. It's not my thing. I'm very more literary based. I like to write and read. And so when it came to going to math classes, I would be behind my peers, or most people would be advanced placement, statistics, calculus, science is like crazy physics, and I'd be at basic algebra, cute little bit of chemistry sometime, or just basic science math. And my peer group would always give me a hard time and say, "Why are you bad at math? Like, we're Asian, like we're supposed to be good at it." And it's funny, as a kid we laugh, but it did develop a kind of insecurity in me because I'm not good at math, and that's such a silly thing because so many people aren't good at math. But because of that model minority, because Asians are stereotypically known to be good at math, I felt like I was disappointing as an Asian, which shouldn't be the case because my friends that weren't of the Asian group were bad at math and they wouldn't give me a hard time. They're like, I'm just not good. But the expectation for me to be good was a lot higher. I just think it wasn't fair that I'm allowed to fail and have shortcomings just like anyone else. But because I'm grouped as being proficient at this without people knowing me, it really made me struggle trying to get through that. And so, aside from high school, translating into the military, I think I still took that with me. If it wasn't just a math problem, it was just technical skill. I'm very good at abstract thought and being very communicative when it comes to problem solving. But some things like working with Excel, or I work supply, so I count a lot of things. I really struggle. I have to recount, and people would make fun of me, in a funny way. But it still kind of lingered in me, like, geez, I just wish I could be that stereotypical Asian that was good at math, or could just understand technical things better. Only until recently I realized that I had to let that go because I'm just not good at it as a person, not because I'm Asian, but because I just am not good at math and I don't like math. I'm going to be happy to admit I really don't like to be under that stereotype. And I'm okay not being good at something because what I do to leverage that is find somebody that is, and I work as a team with them. So I think that model minority umbrella, it affects us in a lot of ways, more than just the technical skill, but maybe having this pride to stay that model minority and not allow us to have shortcomings, which is impossible. We're human. We're not just labeled as the Asian community. We're just people trying to do our best in the best way we can. That's a great question. I would say the biggest challenge I faced was recently. So in the military, I'm enlisted. I've been in for 6 years, but a dream of mine was always to commission and become an officer. So rewinding, obviously I joined the military kind of as like a stalling stint just before going to college. And after joining a few years, I've been exposed to so many diverse communities of people. And I just found that I really love being a part of this community and I wanted to be a part of it in every way I could. So after being experienced with the enlisted side, I felt that I would be proficient in learning what the officers do and helping the enlisted community even better. So my biggest challenge was just speaking that to light. I know from the beginning, since 2015, I would say like, I want to be an officer, but it was like a quiet idea. I was kind of shy. I didn't know if I could do it, mainly because of that technical skill. I'm like, I'm not good at testing. This AFOQT is really hard, I hear. I had horrible ASVAB scores. So a lot of the time I cut myself short of trying opportunities because I felt that technical skill would be what left me behind it against my peers. But I actually this year, or back in 2020, early in that year, I decided that I needed to push through school. I stalled school for a minute just because I was scared of not succeeding. I wanted to get good grades, but I didn't want to fail. So I kind of put in my head that if I didn't try, I wouldn't necessarily be failing in school. But I eventually threw that aside because I want a degree and I want to be an officer. So I pushed school back to back. Like I had no personal time. I was just doing school. And I eventually put in a package for the Airman Scholarship and Commissioning Program, which allows me to separate from my contract and go to Air Force ROTC at any school. But it's a hard program or a hard competition because you have to build your package yourself, get it routed, get it evaluated at a board and hopefully be accepted. I remember working on this package. Literally, I would stay up all night because in the States, that's the US time, to call people, ask questions. And it was a good maybe 6 to 8 months of me grinding at this. And then I worked literally till the deadline. The deadline was October 16th. And I didn't have one of the requirements, which was a signature from the school I was attending. And that morning, I got a signature from the school and I needed to submit the package the next day, but I needed my commander to review it. So my biggest challenge here was I think that umbrella hit me again because the last thing I wanted to do was hinder people. You know, being as an Asian, I think another stereotype is that we're quiet. We're not bothersome. We don't ask for too much. We don't speak our minds very much. But I really wanted this. And I knew that if I asked, I was going to get like a big kickback about why is this so last minute? Why is this on my table now? But I knew that if I didn't try this time, that I would regret it for myself because I knew I had a solid package. I knew I did everything I could. And I don't want to leave it up to a what if and never know if I would have got it. So I did end up going to the commander. I had a talking to about being last minute and timely. So I was like crying afterwards. I was so embarrassed because it was so outside my comfort zone. I felt like I ruined my reputation. But come January, February time period, he walks in and congratulates me because I got accepted. So I was really happy, not just because my package got accepted, but because I didn't let myself shoot myself in the foot before I even tried. I pushed myself outside of my fear of being embarrassed, of being loud, or vocalizing what I wanted. And the outcome was the success that I've always desired. So I would say with that challenge being recent really has propelled me in pursuing different avenues and being more outspoken, being unapologetic about what I want in life and how to get there. And I think it's a good philosophy that I push onto my airmen too, because you never know what the answer is going to be unless you try. Like you're always going to have a no until you ask the question. What motivates me? I think it's just the drive, you know, just being hungry for wanting more. There's a time, you know, in our adolescence and high school where it's like, yeah, you know, I'm just living in the moment. But, you know, right now I'm married. I got married young. So I got married at like 20 or 21. And there was a lot of things that people told me, like my mom too, because, you know, she didn't want me to get married super young. So I'm sorry, mom. But there was a lot of things that come with that, with their own stereotype of marrying early, which is like, you know, you won't be able to achieve certain things. You're going to be limited by your spouse. And I could see signs of that, but I told myself that I didn't want to allow that to be the reason why I don't succeed. You know, marriage to me was adding on another person in my life for this journey. And so whenever I do something, I think of it as a way to build myself in my relationship and build myself as a person. It's fortunate. My husband was in the military too. He served 8 years. So he's very supportive, and having the supportive family is awesome. You know, it's very good to have a support system to push you to your goals and help remind you that you need to speak your goals to life. So, but if I really do drive it down to a nuclear factor that contributed to my goal setting mindset and drive, I'd say my stepdad, Frank, just because he was the one that planted the Air Force seed in the first place and pushed me outside of my perspective. And growing up with him too, you know, I grew up with my mom as a single mom for almost 12, 13 years, not really having a male figure like a stepdad like he was. So when he came into the picture, it was a big change. You know, he made me do chores. He was very naggy, kind of annoying, you know, and I didn't like it for a while, but he always was the one to see me in the best light possible, even when I didn't see it. He would make me write down my goals on paper. Like he'll just rip a random paper out, a sticky note, a napkin, and I'd write down all my goals and he'd hold me to it, you know, and if I didn't get it, he'd talk to me about why, and I'd have to identify my shortcomings. And after speaking it to light, it makes me upset. I'm like, why couldn't I achieve this? So now I try to keep that philosophy with me in my marriage, personal and professional life. If I want to be successful in any of it, I need to speak it to life, write it down, remind myself that this is something that I need to achieve, and we only have one life to live. I'd hate to go and not think back about how I got everything out of this life possible.
If you could go back in time and talk to your younger self, what piece of advice would you give her?
If I can go back in time to my younger self, I would say, one, don't stop chasing boys. That's like such a waste of time early. But I would definitely tell her to not worry about what other people think. I think this is a common throwback question to yourself, but it is truly such an impactful thing to realize at an early age. Even as an adult, it's hard. We see adults get worked up over other people's opinions or thoughts or actions, when at the end of the day, it's really you that has the show. Whether somebody has this idea that you're not going to succeed, or this person has horrible expectations of you, it doesn't matter, because it's your life that you're trying to mold. Whether you don't meet their specific expectation doesn't mean that you don't meet your own success and needs. So if I could just tell myself to not worry, just keep grinding, I think I would save myself a lot of stress growing up, and a lot of just long-term negotiating with myself to convince my own passions that they were realistic for what I needed.
You give amazing answers, so I'm gonna keep picking your brain. What does the Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month mean to you?
This month is actually very special. I growing up in Seattle, there's a large Asian community, and I never thought much of it, because I grew up in it. But after leaving and joining the military, I realized I was a part of a community, and it was a huge one that really molded the kind of person I am. My first duty station was Illinois, Scott, and there was not a lot of Asians there, And so when I was there during this time of the month, there was never some kind of activities going on downtown. I mean, there may be like small organizations, but not the same hype back home would have. I remember growing up, my grandma would always go to this Asian market that was held every weekend, and we would just go, she would go speak her language with people, and my grandpa would, and we'd eat food, cuisines that everybody would pitch out and just socialize with. And it was so nice, and I used to think it was a burden growing up. I'm like, oh, I don't want to have to go to the market, or I don't want to have to go to temple. But now I look back and I go on leave, and I look forward to those moments just to touch base with the people that molded me. This month is just a special month to shout out the people that are so essential to the community, not just Asian community, but to the United States, and into the world. We're such an essential part of the world's dynamic, what we contribute to the world, what we contribute to one another to thrive, to succeed, create even more diversity in the world. It's something to celebrate. And if it just means one day, 1 month to give a special shout out to everyone, then so be it. And it's nice to see people have their voice, even if we're stereotyped to be quiet. This month, I do see people come out and share their lifestyles with other people, and more interests come out. So the boiling pot of diversity grows each time, every month too, not just the Asian Pacific Heritage Month, but every other celebratory diversity group there is, because all we can do is just learn from each other and grow, and hopefully have a better idea of what it means to be people, living nowadays, because we have a lot to contribute. And just seeing people be happy, be proud, and be celebratory of where they come from is just a celebration of its own.
What can we do as leaders within our community to help prevent hate crimes against AAPI members?
That's a great question. And, it's sad that it has to be a question that we have to ask. What can we do to prevent this happening to us or anyone in general? For me, I think that honestly encouraging each other to believe that we matter is the biggest thing, like outreach, support, an encouragement to raise your voice and be louder. We don't have to be a model minority. We don't have to be quiet or docile. We can be loud. We can speak how we feel, and I think that seeing one another be vocalized and passionate and emotional about our means and our love for each other is enough to hopefully encourage the community to speak out and encourage us to tell one another, like, hey, you matter, we matter. We shouldn't accept this, and we shouldn't accept other people doing it to others either, because at the end of the day, I think as a collective, we want to just have peace. We want to be able to have the respect, the love, the dignity, equality. And it's not possible if we don't encourage one another internally first that we're worth fighting for. And so until that happens, I don't think we can save everybody. We need to be able to understand, look into ourselves first and think, hey, this is what needs to be done. I need to step up. I need to be proud and not be ashamed of anything. And as I translate to everyone else, I think that slowly but surely that mutual respect will start happening.
What is your legacy and how do you want to be remembered?
That's a great question. I rehearsed it in my head a million times and I have like a million answers.
Yeah.
But for legacy, I just want to be known. It's so simple. I think as a good person, as just a good person that just was trying to live her life the best she possibly could, help as much people as she possibly could. And if I think about it in the perspective, if I had great grandchildren or, family members that want to look back at me after I've passed, I'd want them to think, man, she really grinded. She spoke her mind. She did what she wanted to do and she got it done. She laid the foundation for us, and I hope that drive translates into my descendants, and that they can continue to pass on this need to be unapologetically real with themselves and to take life into their hands 100% and to not hold back.
Well, that concludes our interview, guys. I truly appreciate you, Mrs. Songkham. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and experience with us.
Thank you for having me. I had a great time. I really appreciate what you guys are doing here by giving just bits and pieces of our community a voice, and that we're able to share on such a special month.